Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and this is the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a top advisory firm, using my training as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, yet fueled by the same passion that drives me in everything that I do, which is teaching and mentoring. My goal is to share straightforward lessons and practical takeaways that you can put into action to help fuel your leadership journey. Thanks for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. A new promotion, a new title, a new seat at the table. The congratulatory emails and LinkedIn messages pour in, but then your quiet reality starts to set in. You look around and realize that the role you've stepped into has no definition. It has no roadmap. There has been a lack of clarity regarding what success entails, the measures for gauging it, and any objectives or key results. Throughout the entire promotion process, somehow the conversation remained at a high level, and the details that were supposed to be sorted out, well, they never were. But yet, here you are. New position, new title, and left to figure this out and report back. This happens more often than we want to admit as leaders. Promotions usually come with prestige, but without direction. And without direction, the shine fades very fast. But the good news? You do have the power to define your own success. You can set the structure. You can set the rhythm and the ground rules that will allow you to not only survive, but to lead extremely well. A leadership promotion is not the same as a leadership plan. Too many organizations elevate people into new roles with vague mandates such as make things better or take us to the next level. These phrases sound inspiring, but they leave the leader lost, especially the newer ones. That lack of clarity is not a recipe for success. It sets leaders up for reaction instead of intention. And if you've ever felt this tension, you are not alone. Many leaders have been in your shoes. I have been in those shoes. And today, I'd like to discuss actionable protocols that can help you get unstuck. When new leaders enter uncharted territory, frameworks, methodologies, and protocols can serve as both a compass as well as a map. And two of the most practical protocols I have personally implemented as a leader are OKRs and the 4DX methodologies. Combined, they helped me shift from vague ambition to very specific and measurable execution. So let's talk about them right now. The first is OKRs, or Objectives and Key Results. This was originally developed at Intel by Andy Grove and later popularized by John Doerr in his book, Measure What Matters. OKRs help leaders define and measure what matters most. You start with just one or two objectives that matter most for the quarter, not the year. So each objective should be ambitious, not fuzzy. And then we attach to it 3 to 5 what are called key results. So those are the specific things that will make progress visible and measurable. Think of the objectives as what and the key results as how you will measure it. So let's take an example. Instead of saying improve team performance, your OKR could look like this. Objective: strengthen team collaboration this quarter. Then key results: increase cross-functional project completion by 20%. A second key result could be hold 2 team offsites. And a third key result could be achieve 90% satisfaction in peer feedback surveys. So OKRs remind leaders that success lives in both vision as well as measurement. And I highly encourage that you go out and purchase the book, Measure What Matters. Now, the second one that I want to talk to you about, the second protocol, is called 4DX, or the 4 disciplines of execution. This was developed by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Hewling and detailed in their book, The Four Disciplines of Execution. So what 4DX does is provide a roadmap for your OKRs. So while OKRs define what to pursue, what I found personally was that the 4DX protocols are really helpful in explaining how to go about pursuing my objectives and key results. So I want to talk about 3 areas in particular, but similar to OKRs, I recommend and absolutely go out and purchase this book. And when you do purchase this book, use a pen and highlighter throughout. So here's 3 big takeaways. Number 1, focus on the wildly important. In other words, narrow down your objectives so that your energy is not spread too thin. The second part of the 4DX protocol I want to emphasize on is act on lead measures. This is so helpful. So identify the daily or weekly actions that will drive results. When you read Measure What Matters, what you're going to note is that what's missing from key results are your daily and weekly initiatives actually to achieve your key results. In other words, lead measures are the actions you take to move the needle on key results. Those could be projects, they could be tasks, they could be activities. Third, this is just as good. Keep a compelling scoreboard. What does that mean? Well, quite literally create a scoreboard, whether it's in Excel, whether it's in Word, whether it's pen and paper. Visibility creates accountability. People play differently when they can see the score. I personally leveraged a scoreboard for the first year in my new leadership role, and I presented it to my team above me to detail transparency of what was working, where my blockers were that week, that were preventing me from achieving more success. And I provided that in great detail. And so it told me and it told them how well I was performing for that week. So I cannot emphasize enough how vital the scoreboard was for me as well as for my senior leaders. It created this cadence of accountability in the weekly check-ins, and it built momentum on top of momentum. What I found is that when OKRs and the 4DX were combined as one singular protocol, it created a very powerful rhythm. OKRs give clarity about where you are going. 4DX keeps you honest about whether you are moving. So together, they help leaders avoid the trap of setting goals once and forgetting them until the annual performance review cycle. Now, a helpful way to think about how you set goals as a leader is to picture a tree. So the roots are your mission and your values. Those things never move, or they shouldn't ever move. The trunk represents your quarterly objectives, strong, steady, and foundational. The branches of the tree are your monthly goals. They extend outward and they are flexible. And just like real branches, they can sway and move around. The leaves are your weekly and daily actions. They are small on their own, but together, well, they make the tree vibrant and alive. If you're not taking care of the roots, you'll never see the necessary nutrients to the trunk, which will make the branches strong and allow the tree to create the leaves. And if you want to know whether your tree is healthy, well, look at the fruit. That is your key results. They prove that growth is real. It all starts, though, with having a strong understanding of your mission and values, for without that, your tree will wither. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about, the second protocol that I think is essential here, is what I call your sacred ground. Now, look, every leader, regardless of industry, has one piece of sacred ground, and it's not your office, it's not your laptop, it's not your phone, it's not your inbox. It is your calendar. I learned this back in 2010 when I read what I thought was a groundbreaking idea by David Allen in his cult-like following book called Getting Things Done, or GTD for short. Allen said that your calendar is your hard landscape. What you put in your calendar is what you will get out of your week. If you don't guard it and protect it, someone else will. In other words, your calendar tells the truth about what you value. If it is only filled with back-to-back meetings, fire drills, and other people's priorities, well, then your own priorities will never see the light of day. Protecting your calendar at all costs means carving out time for things that rarely feel urgent, but are always important. Things like learning and reading and reflection and connection. These are real important things as a leader. And one more thing, even carving out time to eat a meal like a human being throughout the course of the day is actually critical for you. Guarding these blocks of time isn't about being selfish, but instead it's about being strategic and intentional about how you spend your time, where you are choosing to spend your time, and what matters most to you as a leader. Because the reality is you cannot lead others or accomplish those lofty OKRs if you do not first lead yourself. That leads me to the third protocol I want to talk about, which is really the linchpin, and that is self-care. So look, here's a hard truth. Leadership begins with self-care. If you do not care for yourself, your leadership will suffer. Remember, your well-being is a priority. And to be clear, self-care is not about indulgent spa days. It's about disciplined care for the body and mind that your leadership, your team, and your clients frankly depend upon. It's why you are in the role that you are in. I carve out time every day on my calendar before the actual meetings start for mindfulness meditation. That gives me 10 minutes to do nothing other than to sit there and be mindful of the breath going into my body and the breath leaving my body. The focus and restraint to focus just solely on your breath is much harder than it sounds because the mind is always racing. So the ability to be able to calm the mind down and think of nothing other than the flow of the breath in and the flow of the breath out takes a lot of work. However, the net positive result that you get over time, meaning not just like after one session, but day after day and week after week and month after month, it really is incredible. I have been doing this for years. You focus more, you are less reactive, and you are more intentional about your words and actions throughout the course of the day. Now, I also spend time using a pen and paper to jot down my daily gratitude. This is not new age foo-foo stuff. The neuroscience here is fundamental. The ability to focus for even 5 minutes a day on who or what you are grateful for creates what Sean Aker calls a virtuous cycle of positivity, and it does have a positive impact on your daily interactions. It does for me. Now, I said that self-care is a hard truth because too many leaders are afraid to take this time or feel as if they don't have the luxury of time to do what won't have an immediate return on their time investment, like responding to that next email. But honest reflection and renewal should not be considered luxuries. In my personal leadership experience, they are in fact requirements for truly inspired leadership. When you neglect yourself, your ability to lead others diminishes. And when you invest in yourself, that capacity multiplies. Here's the takeaway. Titles and mandates are too vague to guide your day-to-day reality. So the 3 protocols that we talked about today are musts. 1, create clarity through OKRs and the 4DX methodologies. 2, protect your calendar. Guard it as sacred ground. And 3, lead yourself first. Self-care is the linchpin of leadership. Leadership without clarity is exhausting, but clarity does not always have to be handed to you. You can create it. The protocols and disciplines discussed today are effective mechanisms that will help you define success. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.